It is Infant Mental Health Awareness Week, and the theme this year is Speak Up for Babies. So I would love a moment of your time while I speak up for the babies who were born to parents who have moved through the unexpected. The parents who have received news about a difference in a baby's genetics, health, or development before they were born. So the babies and the infants that are born to these parents may be the baby whose health or genetics was different, or it may be a rainbow baby, a baby that was born after the loss or a TFMR in a previous pregnancy. We need to speak up for these babies who were born to this group of parents because we need to recognize the experience of these parents. It's been hidden for a very long time. Both parents who experience loss for any reasons after prenatal diagnosis and the parents who continue pregnancy after prenatal diagnosis. We need to come back and think of those experiences for the parents. So, for those who may continue pregnancy, sometimes the actual all of those things that we help that we know that support infant mental health, those things like attachment and a parent's responsiveness and the parent's adaptation to parenting, all of these things can be really threatened after prenatal diagnosis when a parent or parents are expected to make decisions about continuing or ending pregnancy. Sometimes that means that they can actually shut down attachment because it can be a very hard thing to think about where you're going to go, what decision's going to be. Sometimes medical appointments can also become very threatening in nature or very traumatic or just anxiety provoking because sometimes we have this focus on worst case scenarios. There can be an assumption that if we tell parents how bad things can be, that will help them prepare for the worst case scenario. But this means that for some parents, when they continually go to appointments, they can continually face this worst case news. And it can extend beyond medical in terms of focusing on, well, how will your marriage survive? How will your other children? How are you going to cope on one income? Or what if you can never work again? We don't tend to ask those questions of parents who are having babies. It's only the parents who receive a prenatal diagnosis that then get this focus on worst case scenario, where suddenly the odds focus on all of the potential bad things that could happen. Very different to a typical pregnancy where we want to encourage adaptation, where we want to encourage parents to make those transitions and to make that preparation. It's also different after birth for those parents who continued pregnancy because, our appointments after birth are very much based on the typical. So you may have typical surveys about birth care. You may have typical appointments with maternal child health nurses who do checklists and look for the typical things. You may go to a parents group that focuses on typical milestones and sit there wondering if your baby will ever do these things. It can be very isolating. And it can take time for attachment and all of those things and guilt and all of those things in that complex experience to, for parents to adapt. And we need to be able to support them so that they can support their infant mental health. We also know from the research that parents who have experienced a TFMR in a previous pregnancy are also can have a lot of mental health challenges during their pregnancy and their adaptation and welcoming their new baby into the world. It can be very complex experience in celebrating the birth of a new baby and remembering and honoring the baby who has lost and is in hearts instead of hands. So we need to have these complex discussions. We need to talk about the infants. We need to speak up for babies of parents who've received a prenatal diagnosis, no matter the pathway, no matter the outcome. And we need to make sure that they're factored into all of these discussions that we're having about the first the first 1,000 years, the first 1,000 days, the first 2,000 days. We need to factor parents who've received a prenatal diagnosis into all of this before we can really equitably support infant mental health.